Hi, greetings. It's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and today I want to talk about managing diversity and inclusion. It's one of my favorite topics, and I take a lot of things for granted, I know, but I want to share with you some basic definitions and some thoughts to consider, even a few laws. If you want to create an organization that's really strong, that really helps gain greater market share and holds on to that greater market share, you really as a leader have to recognize that diversity is the key, and not only hiring for diversity, but recognizing the value, the true value of diversity and making sure that you got the right management systems in place so that people don't leave the organization. And so hopefully in this video you're going to be able to understand some of the facts, figures, and definitions that are important in understanding this whole philosophy of managing a diverse organization. So here's what you're going to learn today in this video. We're going to talk about some changes in the U.S. workforce that make diversity so important and a leadership issue. We're going to explain how diversity, if well managed, can give organizations a competitive edge. We're going to be able to identify challenges associated with managing a diverse workforce. We're going to define some terms like monolithic, pluralistic, and multicultural organizations. We're going to talk about steps that leaders can use in organizations to cultivate diversity, and we're going to talk essentially about some basic skills, knowledge about cultural differences needed to manage diversity on a global scale. So let's talk about two distinct sets of diversity and inclusion activities. One is called diversity management, and this involves basic activities such as recruiting, training, promoting, and utilizing full advantages of individuals with different backgrounds, beliefs, capabilities, and cultures. It's about understanding and deeply valuing employees' differences to build a more effective and profitable organization. And then this term called affirmative action. And affirmative action is a special effort to recruit and hire qualified members of groups that have been discriminated against in the past. So let's talk about the differences between affirmative action and diversity management program. So I'm going to read to you some basic facts. So let's talk about purpose. Affirmative action is a corrective. It's about correcting historic wrongs and past current discrimination against minorities, women, and other protected classes. Diversity and inclusion from the SHRM organization, the Society for Human Resource Management, they say that D&I, or diversity and inclusion, is about bringing together and valuing diversity of all stakeholders, from employees to customers, achieving a competitive advantage. Origin. The affirmative action is about Executive Order 11246, and it's related to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. With diversity and inclusion from SHRM, there's no precise data. However, D&I has become an integral component of most employers' human resource strategies. Approach. So, formally written plan for affirmative action is about proactively recruiting, hiring, and promoting minorities, women, and other protected classes. With diversity and inclusion, it's a company-driven approach to foster an inclusive environment in which all stakeholders contribute to organizational objectives. So, is affirmative action required by law? Yes and no. So, yes, for federal, state, and local agencies, as well as certain federal contractors and subcontractors of those agencies, and they're required to have an affirmative action plan, and it is voluntary for private employers to have one unless it is court-ordered to correct discriminatory practices. Of course, if you are in the human resource department or a leader in an organization, it really isn't required other than that for diversity and inclusion, but it truly helps position your organization for success, and recognizing that people want to see themselves in the organization, and people growing and leading other people in the organization. So as far as enforcement of affirmative action, the Office of Contract Compliance Programs, or the OFCCP, is located in the United States Department of Labor. So some examples of organizations with the program: the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, universities, Boeing, for instance, other successful companies that use it for diversity and inclusion. Big names like Microsoft, Pepsi, Intel, Kraft Foods, General Electric, and Kaiser Permanente. So diversity programs, if they're managed properly, truly can make a positive difference in the organization. So from the late 1800s to the early 1900s, most of the immigrants of the United States came from countries like Italy, Poland, Ireland, and Russia. These people were considered outsiders because most of them didn't speak English and had different customs and work styles from what other people considered mainstream from American culture. They struggled to gain acceptance in the steel, coal, automotive, manufacturing, insurance, and finance industries. As late as the 1940s, and sometimes beyond, colleges discriminated against immigrants, Catholics, and Jews, establishing strict quotas that limited their numbers when they were admitted, if they were admitted at all. And this type of discrimination severely diminished employment prospects of each of these groups until the 1960s. Women's struggle for acceptance in the workplace. This was something that was a little more difficult. When the women's right movement was launched in Seneca Falls in 1848, most occupations were off limits to women, and colleges and professional schools were closed to them. In the first part of the 20th century, when women began to be accepted into professional schools, they were subject to severe quotas. There was also widespread assumptions that certain jobs were done only by men and other jobs only by women. And as recently as the 1970s, classified ad sections in the newspapers listed jobs by sex, with sections headed "Help Wanted Males" or "Help Wanted Females," and women who wanted a bank loan needed a male co-signer, and married women were not issued credit cards in their own name. This discrimination started to decline with the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and other legislation that began to be enforced. So it wasn't that long ago that Americans of different backgrounds and genders were discriminated with. And of course, we are, as employers, need to recognize we got to do the right thing for the right reason, because the right reasons really are everybody can bring value to an organization no matter their background. So you want to hire the best qualified people, and so you've got to have the right systems in place. So diversity truly has helped shape today's workplaces, but we have to take a look back and recognize that there was racial segregation in education. And there were many things that the civil rights movement has changed to make America even better. And so it really is important to take a look back and recognize where we've been and where we can go from here. So there are many components that make up a diverse workplace, and so some considerations in a diverse workplace include women, older employees, radical ethnic minorities, immigrants, religious employees, and physical and mentally differently challenged or differently abled employees. We need to consider veterans, sexual orientation, lifestyle, skill and educational level, economic class, function or position within a firm. So people are people, and we really must not consider ways that help limit people, but find ways to bring out the best in others. Sexual harassment closes down organizations. Obviously, it's illegal, but if you really want to have people bringing out their best, you must have a workplace that's free of all kinds of harassment. And so there's a couple different kinds of harassment that some legal terms. Quid pro quo harassment is the submission to or rejection of sexual conduct used for the basis of employment decisions, and then something called hostile environment. And this occurs when unwelcomed sexual conduct has the effect of unreasonably interfering with job performance or creating an intimidating work environment. There are some basic components of a company's policy that should be implemented to prevent harassment. So, one way managers can help their companies prevent harassment or avoid punitive damages if a lawsuit is filed is to make sure that their organization has an effective and comprehensive written policy on harassment. Such a policy would have the following basic components. And so, reading from my notes, develop a comprehensive organization-wide policy on sexual harassment and present it to all current and new employees as they're hired. Stress that sexual harassment will not be tolerated under any circumstances. Emphasis is best achieved when the policy is publicized and supported by top management. Number 2, holding training sessions with supervisors to explain Title VII requirements, their role in providing an environment free of sexual harassment, and proper investigation procedures done when charges occur. 3, establish a formal complaint procedure in which employees can discuss problems without fear of retaliation. The complaint procedure should spell out how charges will be investigated and resolved. 4, act immediately when employees complain of sexual harassment. Communicate widely with investigations while conduct objectively with appreciation for the sensitive issues. And 5, when an investigation supports employee charges, discipline the offender at once. For extreme serious offenses, discipline should include penalties up to and including discharge. Discipline should be applied consistently across similar cases and among managers and hourly employees alike. And finally, 6, follow up on all cases to ensure satisfactory resolution of the problem. So it really is important to create organization-wide policy, establish a complaint procedure, train supervisors, act on complaints, discipline offenders, and then follow up and resolve cases. So every little system and policy in place really needs to make sense for supporting people to do the right thing for the right reason so that people can be their very best. As far as minorities and immigrants, we have to consider that Black, Asian, and Hispanic workers hold more than one of every 3 jobs. Foreign-born workers make up more than 17% of the U.S. civilian labor force, and about half of these workers are Hispanic, and 24% of these are Asian. 1 in 66 people in the United States identifies himself or herself as multiracial, and that number could soar to 1 in 5 in the year 2050. People with disabilities are the largest unemployed minority in the United States. Now let's shift gears and talk about some successful immigrant entrepreneurs here in the United States. From South Africa, Elon Musk of SpaceX and Tesla. From Belgium, Liz Claiborne. From Russia, Sergey Brin of Google, or part of Alphabet. From France, Coco Chanel. From India, Vinod Khosla of Sun Microsystems. From Australia, Rupert Murdoch of the News Corporation. And from India, Indra Nooyi of Pepsi Company. So it really is important to recognize that other people from other countries truly can make a positive difference in your organization if you allow them to. So tomorrow's workers truly will be more varied than ever. By the year 2024, it's estimated that over 1/3 of workers will be above age 55 or older. Entry-level workers of some positions will be in short supply. 70% of workers between 45 and 74 intend to work in retirement. And to prevent an exodus of talent, employers truly need strategies to help retain and attract skilled older workers. A well-managed diversity and inclusion program can really create a competitive advantage. It improves your ability to attract and retain motivated employees. It gives a better perspective on a differentiated market, and the ability to leverage creativity and innovation in problem solving is enhanced. And then, of course, the enhancement of organizational flexibility. An inclusive workforce really has some challenges that need to be managed. That includes stereotyping, unexamined assumptions, lower cohesiveness, communications problems, mistrust, and any kinds of tension. So let's go in and talk about some basic terms. I know this video is kind of long. So with multicultural organizations, a monolithic organization is an organization that has a low degree of structural integration, employing few women, minorities, or other groups that differ from the majority, and thus has a highly homogeneous employee population. So that's called monolithic organization. A pluralistic organization is an organization that has a relatively diverse employee population and makes an effort to involve employees from different genders, races, and cultural backgrounds. And then a multicultural organization is an organization that values cultural diversity and seeks to utilize and encourage it. So how organizations can cultivate a diverse workforce includes securing top management's leadership and commitment, assessing the organization's progress towards goals, attracting employees, training employees in diversity, and then retaining diverse employees. So it really is important to make sure that you have to have the right systems in place. Once you attract a diverse talent pool, you have to make sure that there are proper support groups, mentoring, career development programs, system accommodation, and then accountability, of course. And these types of things can truly help make a big difference. We have to consider when we are managing diversity across borders some of the basic terms. So an expatriate is a parent company nationals who are sent to work at a foreign subsidiary. Impatriates are foreign nationals brought into work at the parent company. Host country nationals are individuals from the country where an overseas subsidiary is located. And then third country nationals are individuals from a country other than the country of the host country of an overseas subsidiary. So just a few terms there. Ethnocentrism is the tendency to judge others by the standard of one's group or culture, which are seen as superior. And then culture shock is disorientation and stress associated with being in a foreign market. So we really have to make sure that we as leaders are doing the right thing for the right reasons with people, and those right reasons truly are making people feel like they're genuinely valued people in our organization, and that they are allowed to be empowered to be as creative as they possibly can. So some ways to prevent failed global include structure the assignments clearly, use valid selection methods, prepare expatriates and their families, assign mentors, encourage communication, measure performance, develop a re-entry plan. And I want to bring you back to Hofstede's view of cultural differences. We've probably talked about this before. I know that I have if you've watched other videos, but there is a wealth of cross-cultural research that has been conducted on differences and similarities among other countries. So Gert Hofstede has identified 4 dimensions along which managers in a multinational company can tend to view cultural differences. So here they are. Power distance, that's the extent to which society accepts the fact that power in an organization is distributed unequally. Uncertainty avoidance is the extent to which people in a society feel threatened by uncertain and ambiguous situations. Individualism versus collectivism, this is the extent to which people act on their own or as a part of a group. And then masculinity and femininity, this is the extent in which society values quality of life over quantity of life. So as a basic overview, we talked about workforce changes that make diversity a critical issue. We've talked about challenges to managing a diverse workforce. We've talked about monolithic, pluralistic, and multicultural organizations. We discussed steps that managers can take to cultivate diversity. And we talked about the skills and knowledge about cultural differences that are needed to manage diversity globally. So I hope this has been a helpful video. I know I've talked a lot, and I hope that you've taken something away from here of value. And even more importantly, I hope that you have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it. I'm Dr. Paul Gerhardt.